Hey guys, good morning. It is, what day is it? We're still on quarantine, but I believe it's Wednesday. And today is a day that I wanted to bring you along with me to work because it's kind of a special day. It is the first day that we are actually starting to implement elective cases again. So many of you know that I am here in New Hampshire and I am working at a hospital here in the interim during the coronavirus pandemic. And the number of coronavirus cases here has plateaued and started to come down. Hospitals have to weigh what they call the risk versus benefit of starting their cases back. So basically, you have the risk of new infections versus the benefit of actually helping people who need to be helped. And here, they've been blessed because they fortunately didn't have nearly the number of cases as other places like New York and Baltimore and New Orleans, etc. So basically, the higher up that be have decided that for the next couple of weeks, we will start to work at 50% capacity. So today's a good day. I have my coffee. This will be somewhat of a new normal. So I guess we'll both see how it goes. All right, so I am headed out to the car. One of the perks of working as an independent contractor is that you actually have the option of negotiating almost everything that you do. And so one of my negotiating sticking points for this particular assignment really stemmed around where I stay. Obviously, if you could imagine, if I'm spending a lot of time here, I'd like to have a bit of a home base. So I negotiated the use of an apartment as opposed to staying in a hotel or any other accommodation. So, all right, so I've already drank my coffee and done everything I need to do for the morning. And now I am walking to where my car is because I'm staying in the downtown area. One of my primary motivations for taking you with me on these day in the life videos is really just so that you all, but more specifically the young people who are considering careers in medicine, get to really see what it's like. You have this dream in your mind and this sort of notion of what you may believe it to be like, and I like to shed some light on that and to kind of just show exactly what you can expect, what the mundane task of actually being a doctor are, and that it's not always drama and dramatics 24/7. It is a job after you're done. So I hope that you like the videos. If you find value in our content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And I'm gonna go to the car. I'll catch up with you guys later. So I've made it to the hospital in one piece, and there are still a lot of changes that remain in effect to decrease the risk of transmission of COVID to patients. One of which is every morning when we come in, we obviously have to wear a mask and we have to fill out a questionnaire that basically certifies that we have not had any symptoms or anything. So now I'm gonna go and get changed and I'll catch up with you guys in a little bit. All right, so I had a free moment to catch back up with you. If you know anything about hospitals, you totally know that the mornings are absolutely super busy. So today we're functioning at 50% capacity, which basically means that we aren't fully staffed, and that is really just a means of maintaining safety with the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't want to restart doing elective cases in large volume before we have demonstrated that there is a continued lowering of new cases of COVID. So every day is a little bit different in anesthesiology, and on a day that I'd like to call a new normal, your day typically is divided up into one of two categories. You're either a solo, where I actually am the anesthesiologist in the operating room providing care, or I may be in a more supervisory position where I work with nurse anesthetists. I'll get into that a little bit later. So today I'm in a supervisory position, and essentially that means that I'm working with nurse anesthetists today, two nurse anesthetists who are absolutely wonderful people. And basically they function as physician extenders, meaning that they are primarily in the operating room administering anesthesia, and I function in the supervisory role with them. So basically what that means is I will do what we call preoperative assessments on each patient, where we do something called history and physical examination. Basically, in layman's terms, that means that we go through and we look at exactly what the procedure is for each patient to determine exactly how risky the procedure is, and then we look at various aspects of the patient, including all their past medical history, their labs, all the tests necessary to sort of risk assess the patients to make sure that they aren't at an increased risk or that there's something that's missing that would make them more safe during the operation. We talk to them about the risk and the benefits of the anesthetic and exactly what they can expect, and give them an opportunity to answer a bunch of questions. And obviously they have to sign all kinds of forms, etc., but we won't go into that. So I had to do that for a couple of people, and then following that we start each case. I started both of those cases with my nurse anesthetist, and they are actually running the anesthetics now that the patients are asleep and otherwise stable. Now I have to go and take care of a couple of other things. I will come back, and during that time I'll explain exactly what the whole supervisory role means, what it means to work with nurse anesthetists, what it means to be a solo anesthesiologist, just to give you a little bit more information. I'll be back. All right, so I just checked on my patients. All things are going well with the nurse anesthetist and each patient in the operating room. So I thought I'd take a few minutes to explain to you exactly how different types of anesthesia practices work. So obviously, sometimes you have anesthesiologists who work solo. And in the current practice that I'm working in, there are times in which I am solo. And by solo, what I mean is that I actually am the person who's administering the anesthetic. I am the doctor in the room with the patient the entire time. And I put that patient to sleep, I wake that patient up, and we take them to the recovery room where nurses take care of them afterwards. Now, there is a second type of practice that we call a care team model. This is more and more common today. If you could imagine, there are way more patients than there are anesthesiologists that are able to be solo in operating rooms to take care of each patient. And so basically there are what we call certified nurse anesthetists, or CRNAs, that function as what we call physician extenders. And as a team of a physician and nurse, we provide the anesthetic care to patients from the operating room to the recovery area. So in this hospital, we have nurse anesthetists who, let me back up. So CRNAs are essentially advanced practice nurses who have additional training in anesthesia for a number of years, and they function as sort of physician extenders in that they are able to administer anesthesia for the most part in a team care model where there is a physician involved. There are some states that have allowed them to practice independently. I'll get into my opinions on that in a different video. But essentially in this hospital we work together. So we have a nice team approach to taking care of patients, and my nurses are now in the rooms with each patient, and at this point what I will do is I'll start to see the next set of patients. I'll consent those patients, and then I will see where the day takes me. OB is looking a little bit busy today, and if you know anything about anything, as a physician, one of the things that we really have to do is be flexible. Being flexible in the doctor world is super necessary, because if you can imagine, things can change on a dime. And when you talk about a specialty like obstetrics and labor and delivery, things change all the time. So you have to be able to pivot, you have to be able to easily shift gears, you have to be able to easily do those things without being frazzled. And now mind you, that comes with experience, but it's a skill that whether you are a pre-med student or you are a pre-health student, in whatever field you find yourself in, it's necessary for you to understand that things will change and that you have to do your best to adapt to those changes. All right, I'm off my soapbox. I'll come back and find you in a little while. So I forgot to tell you that one of the other things that we do as anesthesiologists is we actually sometimes have to do procedures. And if you could imagine, if you're having an operation, you want to feel the least amount of pain that you would otherwise feel. And we don't always like to achieve pain relief with just narcotic medicines, because all those, in addition to the side effects that they have, they are also habit-forming medications. And obviously with the entire opioid epidemic, we want to decrease the risk that people could develop tolerance or develop habits that they otherwise can't control. So we do procedures with local anesthetics to decrease pain. So I had a patient who had a hysterectomy, who required some pain control on her abdomen, and we do something called a transversus abdominis block, which is basically called a tap block. We basically put some local anesthesia into the abdominal area where the nerves run, and people wake up with numbness as opposed to pain. So, you know, we do a lot of things in our field that help people that, unfortunately, because we tend to be fairly quiet and we don't talk a lot of people aren't really aware of. But please be aware, and whenever you see your anesthesiologist, thank them. All right, so things are moving right along here. My first 2 patients woke up just fine. Thank the Lord for that. Otherwise, I thought I'd come back and talk about an experience that I just had, which sort of underscores why anesthesiologists are super important and why certain skills are really necessary in order to be good at this job. Obviously, you really have to be able to deal with people of all different levels pretty well in our job. Obviously, we spend some time with the patient. One of the most integral parts of our interaction with patients is really forming a rapport rather quickly. If you could imagine that surgeons and other primary care physicians have a pretty long and what we call a longitudinal or long-term relationships with patients. For us, that's a little bit different. We meet a patient on the morning of their operation, and part of establishing a rapport with patients is to obviously be confident in your skills, but also taking the opportunity to listen to them and to ensure that they feel comfortable with the experience that they're going to have, and also just the idea of getting someone to trust you in such a way with their life, essentially, is really a skill that takes a lot of time to develop, and people want to know that you care. So taking the opportunity to allay whatever anxieties you can before they go back is really, really important. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you have to be able to communicate well with all of your colleagues, and it takes a team of people in order to take care of patients. So it's not just an anesthesiologist, it's not just a CRNA, which we sort of went over before, but you have nurses, you have technicians, you have folks in the post-operative area, people of all walks that you have to be able to connect with. So it's really important that you're able to talk with people. So I just had a patient who was coming in for an operation, and they had a lower blood pressure, meaning they are hypotensive. And so my preoperative nurse alerted me that this patient was hypotensive. So then, part of your job as an anesthesiologist is really to assess situations. So obviously I go and I assess the patient. She doesn't have any symptoms, but then part of my job is also to figure out why she might be having this lower blood pressure, and to figure out a way to either solve this or to delay the operation so that we ensure that the patient is safe. And in her case, she took her blood pressure medicine pretty late last night. She also took pain medicine this morning, and she's been without food or drink for more than 8 hours. So it's pretty certain that her blood pressure changes are sort of due to a combination of things, but not anything that we can't solve. So, in talking with the nurse, we kind of mulled over what the plan would be. And for her, we planned on just giving her some IV fluid and rechecking the blood pressure. And guess what? That plan worked. So perfect example of how we communicate with our nursing colleagues, and how we have to synthesize information in order to come up with plans to be able to ensure that our patients are safe. I will come back and talk to you more in a bit. All right, so I was talking about the fact earlier that we are sort of in what we call a new normal. You could imagine we are all concerned about the possibility of symptomatic and asymptomatic COVID transmission to patients who have to take care of them. So one of the things that this hospital's implemented is testing for every patient who's coming into the hospital. So they have that rapid antibody test. Every patient gets a nasal swab as they come in, and we know immediately whether or not they've been exposed to the COVID virus, so we can risk assess them. So in addition to that, we actually still have to cover floor intubations and hospital codes. And yes, it's 2020 and we still have to use a pager. I know. So right now, I am just coming back from a code, and thankfully that patient did very well. Now I am on my way to go get some water. One of the most important parts of taking care of other people is taking care of yourself. So I am going to sit and drink some water for a second, and then I am going to have something to eat. So I just finished grabbing a quick bite and, of course, hydrating. And so I wanted to talk just for a second about one other aspect of the job that I really actually forgot to talk about with you guys. So because I'm in a supervisory position, I also have to be concerned about other things. One of those things is the post-anesthesia care unit. Obviously, you know that anesthesiologists take care of patients in the operating room, but we are what you call perioperative physicians. And basically what that means is basically we're in charge of care pre-procedure, intra-procedure, and post-procedure. And after all anesthetics, patients obviously have to wake up in the operating room for the most part, and they recover in the recovery room, where either they recover to a certain point and they go upstairs, or they recover to a certain point and then they go home. So we call that area the post-anesthesia care unit. And if you know anything about hospitals, it's sort of like a makeshift interim ICU, recovery area, etc. But many different things can happen in that area, and so anesthesiologists have to be astute to certain changes in patients' physiology and patient conditions, because that could mean that a patient may need to be admitted to the hospital, or it could mean that a patient may have what we call a prolonged recovery and require more time in the recovery room. So as you can see, based on that, we have sort of a lot of competing interests each day. So you could get calls from nurses who are having concerns and problems with patients in the recovery room that are related from everything related to patients in pain versus the patient's having a heart attack. All of these things have happened to me before. So that's another area that when you're in a supervisory position, you have to be concerned about and really sort of up on. So you really depend on your nurses. Shout out to all the good nurses. We couldn't do it without you guys. Shout out to all the nurses. Anyway, we couldn't do our jobs without that level of communication. So otherwise, now that I have had some hydration, I've eaten something, I think I need to go over to the obstetrical labor and delivery area and check on them. So I will go over there and I will check back with you guys in a little bit. So remember, I talked about the need to be flexible and that anything could happen. Well, one of my colleagues is in a C-section, and a patient who has an epidural, please see the video down below, is experiencing a complication of having an epidural, which can be a lowered blood pressure. So I have to go assess this patient and figure out exactly what to do for said patient. So I'm on my way there. I'll catch you guys in a little bit. All right, so I finished evaluating that patient, and she needed more medication and she needed some IV fluid, so we took care of that, and now she is happy and pushing her baby out currently. Now I will head into a C-section and check on my colleague to make sure that everything's going okay there. I'll come back and check with you guys. So as you can see, we spend a large amount of the day putting out fires in a lot of different locations within the hospital. So I would describe things as being fairly diverse. And by the end of the day, you feel pretty run down, but we love it. Now I'm heading back over to the OR area, and we'll see what madness we can find there. Right, it's currently about 4:30 and I just got relieved. Again, I told you it's a new normal. We are running on a shorter capacity than normal, but I hope you found this video to be of some value and following me around to be kind of entertaining. So listen, go down in the comments and leave me a comment. Let me know exactly what you thought about the video, and if you like me doing these sorts of days in the life. I have certainly enjoyed spending this time with you, and I'll catch you on the next video. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.